So good to have you here today. It's a great day. It's a beautiful day. And fall is here. The leaves are turning. I mean, God, this is the best. I told somebody the other day, I said, there is exactly 3 weeks that I don't complain about the weather every year. And we're right in the middle of it. So this is the nicest and the happiest I get. So I'm sorry when you see me once this winter. I apologize. But it's great, and I hope that you're doing well. I hope that everything's going great for you. And if it's not, I hope you feel Jesus with you through it. And he's working it all out for our good. So today's going to be great. I'm excited about it. I thought worship was beautiful. Let's give it up for the... I promised my wife I wouldn't say anything a couple weeks ago, but I didn't say anything about today. So my wife has basically learned how to play the keyboard in the last couple weeks, and just so that we can worship together. And, I'm going to get in trouble later, but that's all right. God is my defense. He's my fortress. So, hey, real quick before I dive into the sermon, we have next Sunday, a week from right now, we're doing something, is sort of our first annual Fall Friends and Family Day. And we wanted to pick a day. Normally, we kind of celebrate somewhat our anniversary every year of our church and just another year of God's faithfulness. We didn't really, this year, we just didn't want to make a big thing about that as much as we just wanted to pick a day that was kind of built for inviting, celebrating, having a great, fun Sunday. Every Sunday is fun, but a really special day. And we thought Halloween's a couple days later and stuff, so let's just kind of make a special day out of the 29th. And so that is next Sunday. If you'd like to invite any friends and family, it's a special day geared towards that. We're going to have some fun stuff for the kids. We're going to have kind of treats, and it's going to be a kind of just a special day. And so we have invite cards on your way out in the back, and they're not specific to the day, so you can take those and use those anytime. But just an invite card to have something to hand people so they can check out the church. And it's going to be great. So we're asking kind of to prioritize that day. If you can be here, please be here. And also this week, just be prayerful about who we can bring with us. And it's going to be great. You guys ready for a message? Yes. All right. Folks at home, I didn't hear you. You ready for a message? All right. Well, we are walking through the book of Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew. It's been a lot of fun. And I've really enjoyed myself walking through this. It's such a great reminder of what really matters and in the simplicity of the truth, the gospel. And so I think it's been quite beautiful. I'm excited to continue that today. So we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 9, and we're gonna kind of share a few verses there. But I want to build to that and talk about kind of where we are in the story. Jesus has just finished the famous Sermon on the Mount message, and he has descended the mountain where he presented that message. And last week we talked about the first thing he did coming down the mountain was he encountered a man who had leprosy, and he healed that person with leprosy and freed them from the bondage of their own disease. And so it was quite beautiful. And I wanted to walk through, I'm not going to read these, but I'm just going to point them out. Just miracle after miracle after miracle that happens starting at that moment. And so all of chapter 8 into chapter 9 is just a series of miracles, lives being changed, transformed. It is incredible. And so just to broad brush, of course, that was Matthew 8, the first few verses. Jesus heals a man with leprosy. Matthew 8, 1 through 13, you get that plus a centurion, his servant, and is paralyzed. And Jesus heals that person as well. In verses 14 through 15 in chapter 8, Jesus is at Peter's house, and he heals Peter's mother-in-law, who is struggling with a fever, who is sick in bed, and he heals her. Matthew 8:16 through 17, Jesus casts out demons of, the way that the Bible puts it, many people. So we don't know how many, but many people are brought to him. He casts out demons from them. In Matthew 8:23 through 27, we get this very familiar, famous story of Jesus sleeping in a boat as it's crossing to the other side of the sea. And so here are the disciples in the boat, awake and overwhelmed by a storm that they feel like this is it. And so they wake him up and they actually say, we're dying. This is it. And Jesus brings peace, first and foremost, to their hearts. He brings up the fact that, hey guys, where's your faith? You're not trusting me. I'm in your boat. We're good. And then he calms the storm itself. And so then Matthew 8:28, verse 28, Jesus delivers two men who are demon possessed, and the Bible says they are quite violent and aggressive. He casts these demons out. This is kind of cool, dramatic Jesus fashion. Casts them out and sends them into pigs, a flock of pigs, a murder of pigs, a pod of pigs, whatever a grouping of pig. A sty is where they live, but a pig grouping, and a congregation of swine, and sends them right off, lemming style, off the side of a cliff, and it's pretty incredible. And Matthew 9 verses 1 through 8, a paralytic is brought to Jesus, and he heals that paralytic and says, "Hey, buddy, take up your bed and go to the house." And so beautiful moments and powerful moments. And these powerful moments are incredible to read and to consider, but put yourself in the shoes of the folks that this happened to. That's where the serious power is that the people that were affected by this and actually are liberated by the love and grace of Jesus. And so all this leads up to his introduction to the documentarian of this very book, Matthew. So we're going through the Gospel of Matthew, and this brings us to the introduction of Jesus meeting Matthew and recruiting Matthew to be part of his team. And so what I'd like to do for the remainder of the day today is just spend some time on that story and on that encounter, on that meeting, but also tying in together all these encounters that Jesus had previous and even after, and the significance of those things in what he says and does in recruiting Matthew. And so we're going to take a look at Matthew chapter 9, verses 9 through 13, if you want to follow along there, verses 9 through 13. And we're going to put it up on the screen, and this is what it says. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man called Matthew sitting in the tax collector's booth. And he said to him, "Follow me." And Matthew got up and he followed Jesus. And then it happened that as Jesus was reclining at the table in the house, behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and were dining with Jesus and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why is your teacher eating with the tax collectors and the sinners?" But when Jesus heard this, he said, "It is not those who are healthy who need a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire compassion, not sacrifice, for I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners." We have some kind of, there's some speculation in the order of the disciples when they were recruited, especially after the first four. But not to get into that because I don't think it's important for us today. But just to consider, Jesus in Matthew's documentation has already recruited four guys to be part of the team, and specifically four people from an area called Capernaum. And Capernaum is in the northern part of Israel on the Sea of Galilee. And these four people, it was Andrew, who brought his brother Simon, who later is called Peter, to Jesus, and they were made part of the team. And of course, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, the sons of thunder, which sounds like they're like the tag team champions of the world, or a rock band. And so tonight opening for Aerosmith, Sons of Thunder. So it's four guys who are all encountered by Jesus on the beach. And they are fishing, because that's their trade, and that's the primary occupation of folks in this community. It's a primary trade, and then they would work within communities beyond that to bring that fish to other people around the area. And so, but this is the primary function of men in that region. They would be fishermen primarily. But there was another guy who lived in the same area. So this is in the same community, and I might even suggest that possibly the four disciples who were recruited, who were fishermen, knew Matthew, had encountered Matthew at some point in time. That's speculation, but it's also probability. And Matthew is not a fisherman. Matthew he's a tax collector working for the Roman government. And so you pick up a theme when you're reading through the New Testament and the Gospels. You pick up a theme. And I don't know that any of us, if you work for the IRS, God bless you. I hope that you love your job. No one else likes you. And I pray for you because it's not a fun, popular job. No one gets a call from the IRS and like, yay! We don't get letters from the IRS and click our heels, expect something great. This is so much worse. And Matthew, just to kind of put some context to it, he's decided to choose a career that is lucrative. We know with other stories, Zacchaeus coming up, that this is a lucrative career where you can actually make a lot of money, and the career is to siphon taxes from the Jewish people and to feed that into the Roman government. And they were unfairly taxed historically. This was some gouging going on. But on top of that, a tax collector is extra evil in the eyes of the Jewish people because he's turned his back on his own people, and he has chosen this career because he is greedy. There's no other reason. You don't do it because you want to be popular or be liked. You do it because you want to make money. So he's turned his back on his own people to be greedy. And then you would unfairly tax people. You would add extra taxes. You would even turn up the dial on communities of people because your cut comes from the taxation that you're putting on the other people. And so especially you would see chief tax collectors were like mafia bosses, and they all got a cut of everybody's what they would take at the tax window. And so they're just gouging this community, crippling them financially. So Matthew has a very controversial career. And he joins the team. Jesus says, I want you to come follow me. He joins the team, and he is alongside at least four other disciples. And his very presence would represent tension and some pain to the other disciples. So he comes in, and he's already an issue. His presence is problematic already. And so I would go out on a limb and say that most likely Matthew has lost friends, he's lost family, he has lost certainly his reputation, and so he has sacrificed a lot and lost a lot because of his decisions. And so to say that Matthew was found at a place of need, I'd say would be an understatement. And so once you're out there, you're out there. And so the promise of wealth and power and fame and notoriety is luring. And then once you you have to engage in this career, and then you realize it costs you everything. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world but forfeit his soul? What actually matters. And so he is experiencing that and living that. And so he was in need. He was lost. But then on this fateful day, because Jesus rolls into his town, he's found. So what was once lost is found. And then in a very live action kind of playing out of the parable of the prodigal son story, the prodigal son is found, and then they throw a party. So Jesus throws a party, and this is what the Bible says. It happened that as Jesus was reclining at the table in the house, now we don't know, speculation is that this might be Matthew's house. We don't know. It might be an Airbnb. Who knows? Behold, many tax collectors and sinners, many tax collectors and many sinners came, and they were dining with Jesus and his disciples. And then the Pharisees saw this, and they said to his disciples, "Why is your teacher eating with the tax collectors and sinners?" Now you got to think, and again, this is me assuming, you got to think that the Pharisees pulled aside the fishermen to make this statement. Because they're not going to tell Matthew, can you believe these tax collectors? He's one of them, and they know him. So you got to think that they pulled aside the fishermen, because it's kind of a. I mean, listen, this is not. They're not the top tier. This is not the rich and famous fishermen, but it's a respectable career. You can go home and sleep well at night because at least you're not turning your back on your people. You're benefiting other people, and so you got to think that even they were pulled aside, and this is mentioned to them. Why is Jesus lowering himself to the point of having dinner with these kinds of people? So continuing with the prodigal son story, the lost son is found, they throw a party, and the older brother is furious. And the Pharisees would represent the older brother, and they're completely incensed. They are furious that a man who claims to be sent from God, God's man, would be lowering himself to commune with. Now, at this time, you don't casually eat with people. To sit down and share a meal is to basically share family. And so you're saying we're part of each other's lives. It's an endorsement of the person you're eating a meal with. So Jesus is dining with sinners. Now, the Pharisees often felt the need to point out the obvious. And you see this throughout the ministry of Christ. They would point out the obvious. Does Jesus know that these are sinners? I think he's aware, yes. They did that with the woman bursting into the Pharisee's house. Jesus is having a meal with the Pharisee, and the lady barges in, and the response is, if you knew her reputation, if you knew, do you know? They did with Zacchaeus. If you knew the kind of guy he was. They're Captain Obvious, pointing out the obvious. Have you ever gone to a door at a store or restaurant or something like that, and you go to push it, and you realize quickly, I had a 50-50 shot at this, and I made the wrong decision. I'm pushing with all of my might. Either it's locked or it's a pull, and there's always someone behind you. You got to pull. Oh. I'm so glad you told. My next option was going to be reach from the bottom and lift it up like it's a garage door. Oh, pull, okay. Thank you. I was going to have you help me push. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, come on. Captain Obvious, thank you. Yes, absolutely. Well, speaking on that, I was at Kohl's the other day, and I'm never at Kohl's, but Amazon has this weird thing where they're like, hey, return this, and then go to these random places. It's like an Easter egg hunt. Go to these random places all over town. You can return it not at the post office. No, not at UPS. Go to Kohl's and return it there, or Whole Foods. I'm like, okay, all right. Well, I went to Kohl's, and I'm not there much, so I go in, and I have total success. They have automatic doors, and so I walked in very normally. And then I go to leave, and for whatever reason, I was thinking about Jesus, and I was praying for you, most likely, and I'm kidding. So I go to leave, and you ever wait for the automatic door? I was at the side of the automatic door that doesn't move, the stationary part, and the part that moves is over here. And so I'm looking at, and of course, there was one gentleman who hates Kohl's so much that he would not even go into the store. He stood in the little breezeway lobby area. He's sitting there in a chair that I don't know where he got. He bought it at Kohl's and just bought it so he could sit there, say, honey, you shop. I'm going to stay right here and watch idiots try to navigate this door. And so I stand there and I'm like, oh, Jesus, can you just open this door for me? Can you make this a door? Because I look like a moron. So I had to do the old back up and shuffle like, nyah, 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 nyah. Ridiculous. But luckily he didn't say anything. And you got to go around. Thank you for not saying anything. So these Pharisees are the annoying people who state the obvious. You know these are bad people, right? Yes. In fact, that's why I'm with them. That's why I'm sitting with them. And so Jesus' response to the Pharisees, this is what underlines everything that has already happened in the previous chapter, in this chapter, and what happens after this moment for the rest of this chapter. This underlines all of these miracles. This underlines every encounter Jesus has, and every miracle he performs is summed up and underlined by this statement, his response to the Pharisees. They didn't say it to him, he overheard them. And he chimes in, he says, hey, it is not those who are healthy who need a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire compassion, not sacrifice. I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners. This is a theme throughout the life and ministry of Jesus. There is this common, constant theme of he is constantly and consistently offending the righteous, self-righteous religious community with his open, welcome, and obvious care of obviously broken people. Sinfully broken, physically broken, spiritually broken. He is constantly ticking off the self-righteous religious community with that open, obvious, blatant care for the people that he shouldn't even associate with. This is such an issue, and there's such tension here that even when he heals people who have been desperate for years, the criticism is, you healed that guy on the wrong day. It's Sabbath, you broke the rules. He's healed though. He's been suffering his entire life. Yeah, but you did it the wrong day. Obviously, the care and concern was not for the people. It was for the rules. They were in love with the rules. And Jesus was in love with the people. What religion is, and I use that word a lot, and I sometimes I think about maybe I don't give proper definition to it often enough, but the way that I use the word religion is different than being a Christian, different than having faith. Religion is man's attempt to take our own priorities and our own sensibilities and then transfer those things onto God. So what works for me, I need to make sure that that's how God works. So I'm about a meritocracy. I'm about deservedness. I'm about 2 strikes, 3 strikes max, you're out. I'm about hierarchies, elevation. I'm about promotion. I'm about deservedness. That's not how Jesus works. In fact, religion is trying to transfer what works for us onto God, and then Jesus brings something altogether different. I heard one author say, I love this, he said, Jesus didn't just come to redraw, we're trying to color within the lines, and Jesus didn't come to bring us better crayons or draw a new picture to color in. He flipped the paper over. It's upside down. It's counterintuitive. It is backwards. Grace I will preach it for the rest of my life. I've preached the grace of God for many, many years, and I will continue to preach it until as long as I have breath in my lungs, I'm going to preach the good news of God's grace and nothing else. But I promise you, as long as I've been preaching it, as long as I've heard about it, as long as I've read about it, as long as I've considered it, it still doesn't make sense. And it won't. It's otherworldly. We try to make natural sense of something that is supernatural. It's not going to happen. It doesn't fit in my brain. And that's why it's this external trusting. That's why I need to keep hearing it, because it doesn't fit. We forget it because it doesn't fit into the traffic patterns of this world. So we have to keep hearing it because we can't retain it. It's too big. So this supernatural King and Savior does something unheard of. In his very limited, extremely limited time on this planet, in human flesh, in presence with us, he chooses to spend the vast majority of his time with the least and the last and the lowest. Why? Because they need him. Jesus is not moved by deservedness. He's moved by need. This is where religion begins to crumble. Because religion is always building on the understanding of deservedness. And that's not how Jesus works. And he doesn't work that way because if he did work that way, what do I deserve? I deserve hell. And everyone's thinking, man, he must be pretty bad. Well, we're in this together. And we don't deserve what we think we do. Here's the bad news. None of us are nearly as good as we think we are. Here's the good news. Jesus is so much better than you think he is. And then his goodness is more than enough to compensate for our ungoodness, our badness. Our righteousness, filthy rags. But we're not leaning on our righteousness. We're robed in his. Jesus is more than enough, and what he is moved by, what he is gravitated towards, what the flame that he is attracted to, like moth to a flame, is our need. He says it. I didn't come, I'm a physician. Jesus, if the solution to our world's problems was political, God would have sent a politician. If the solution to the world's problems were intellectual, God would have sent someone who was built on intellectualism. He sent a physician. Why? Because we're sick. There's a sickness. It's not that some are good, some are bad. We're all sick. We all suffer from the disease of sin. Everyone does. So Jesus comes as the great physician. And then he makes it known in this powerful, important verse. And again, this verse underlines all the verses that surround it. I didn't come for the healthy. I came for the sick. I didn't come for the self-sufficient. I came for the desperate. He says, I didn't come for the righteous. I came for sinners. Now, We think that, we'll read that as Jesus is drawing a line and saying, some people are righteous and some people aren't. That's not at all what he's saying. What he's saying is, some people think they're righteous. That doesn't mean they are. The category that we live in is not good and bad. The categories that we live in are aware of our badness or convinced that we're good. It doesn't mean we're good and bad. The Bible says that one is good. We all fall short. There is not one righteous. No, not one. Jesus alone is good. And so what he's gravitated towards is those who realize and recognize they aren't. The self-sufficient, he is a gentleman in leaving them alone. Because there's no open door. There's no opening for him to bring himself to. It is rejection. I'm good. Don't need you. Take care of the weak ones. There's a famous song, perhaps you heard it. They are weak. He is strong. To little ones they belong. They are weak. He is strong. Little ones. Little ones are weak. The children, they're weak. Oh, they're weak. They need Jesus. They are weak. He is strong. That song would be way better if it would present an accurate truth to say, we are weak. I am weak. He is strong. Not they, I. But those terms are not popular. We live in a self-help society. We live in a self-sufficient society. We live in a world that is built on self-motivation, self-salvation, self-interest. This is an egocentric world. I'm the star of the movie, everybody else is supporting cast. And we know this. I was at McKay's the other day, and this kid was doing a documentation with his phone of himself walking through the store. And so he's filming himself in McKay's because that's the show that people watch, this guy in McKay's. So I photobombed a few times, don't worry about it. That's the world we live in. It's just like, these people, forget these people. It's me. So the folks that Jesus encountered, this story after story, people that were broken physically, they were broken spiritually, they were broken mentally, they were broken because of their circumstances. They didn't earn his attention. They were desperate for it. They didn't earn it. They needed it. He's a physician, so he goes to the unwell. And yet so many are convinced that they are well on their own. I want to read this. This is one of my favorite verses, Hebrews chapter 4. And this ties in so well to what's happening. So Hebrews 4, 15 through 16. We don't have a high priest who can't sympathize with our weaknesses. Jesus has felt, he's been tempted, he's felt human flesh and frailty. He knows what we're going through. It's not that he's distant, far off, he's felt it. He's one who has been tempted in all things as we are, yet he has not sinned. Therefore, now I want to underline this, let us draw near with confidence. Other translations say, boldly approach the throne of grace, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in our time of need. Now, the dichotomy here is interesting. Boldly, with confidence, approach Jesus. Why? Because we need him. Approach him in our need. It doesn't say boldly approach Jesus, the throne of grace, because we deserve to be there, because we've earned our way there, because we're qualified, because we have a resume. It doesn't say in your time of success. It doesn't say in your time of celebration because you've done so much for Him. It doesn't say boldly approach the throne of grace with a sacrifice, with a fattened calf. It says, come to Him in your lack, in your need, in your desperation, without. Cain showed up with a sacrifice. Here you go. I grew this. This is the fruit of my labor. Look how great. Abel showed up with nothing. Until suddenly in the periphery of his hearing, meh, Jesus himself supplied, God himself supplied a sacrifice. Everything that God wants, He provides. What do we bring to the table? Nothing. Anything that God wants, He supplies. He wants my faith. Okay, He does. Yeah, you're right. But He supplies that faith. He wants my faithfulness. Yes, but while we are faithless, He is faithful. He supplies our faithfulness. Draw near with confidence. Boldly approach so that we receive mercy, find grace, and help in time of need. In His response to the Pharisees, Jesus quotes the prophet Hosea. And it's a quote from Hosea 6, verse 6. And the quote is, I desire compassion, not sacrifice. And so he even makes sure that they understand. Go learn what this means. Go think on this. Selah. Go consider this. So he's encouraging the Pharisees to study their Bible. And if they go to that story, what they find is a story about this great and mighty prophet of God who is holy and respected and revered and heard clearly and spoke clearly the words of God. And God clearly said to Hosea, I want you to go find a wife. And Hosea was like, yes, I hear the Lord and I obey. This is great, great news. Who would you have me marry, Lord? And God says, I want you to marry Gomer. It just sounds like a Disney princess name, doesn't it? Gomer. Golly. Shazam. There's 5 people that know that reference, but I appreciate you guys. That's great. Gomer is not only known for her beautiful name, but like Matthew, she has a sketchy career. And she's famous in her community for being a lady of the night, a lady of the evening. So God's man, God's mouthpiece, God's prophet is commanded by God himself to marry a prostitute. So he's obedient. And old habits die hard, and so Hosea keeps waking up to an empty bed because Gomer keeps stepping out. He keeps finding her in other men's beds. And so he would take her home and clean her and restore her and love her. And his love was the very definition of unconditional, because every out that he had, I mean, after the first time, it'd be very convenient to say, God, this was a bad idea. I try to tell you, but legally, I'm out. This is ridiculous. But God gave him the grace to stay with it. And this story culminates with her disappearing for good. And in that moment, I'd be like, thank you, Jesus. I'm done. But one day he's traveling through town, and there's an auction block where they are auctioning off slaves. And he sees a familiar face. is the tattered remnants of his wife, Gomer, who is being auctioned off. And so he does something that I cannot for a second imagine that I would do. He goes and liquidates everything he has and purchases his own wife. Now, that's not a transfer of property. That is to release her from slavery, because he's restoring her as his wife. This is where the statement, "I desire compassion, not sacrifice," comes from. It is Jesus who makes all the sacrifice. We are the bride. And this is speaking historically to the people of God at this time. This is speaking to Israel. But the story doesn't stop there. We step out on him all the time. Are any of us faithful? I wish to God I could say I am. I wish to God. I'm a pastor. I should be able to say, yep, I'm totally faithful. I'm not. I doubt all the time. I fear way too much. I look everywhere but Jesus most of the time. And I would love to stand up before you and inspire you by saying, guys, I like the thought of being an aspirational leader. It's like, do as I do, follow me as I follow Christ. But I find myself, even in preparation of messages, wanting to say the exact opposite and saying, if you want to know what to do, just do the opposite of what I'm doing. Because I am a professional failure. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not good at this. I'm not good at the weight of this. I'm not good at the mental aspect of this. I'm not good at the emotional aspect of this. I'm just not naturally adept. In fact, I'd say I'm way beyond my depths. I feel that there's a new thing that's come up over the last several years. They call it imposter syndrome, where people have to struggle with the mental aspect of feeling that they don't deserve and they don't belong where they are and doing what they do. I feel that pretty much 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But then I'm reminded of that story and so many others where the focus and the attention is not to hate Gomer. It's not to despise her. You're inspired by the goodness of Hosea. What does Hosea's name mean? Salvation. He represents salvation. That you can't outrun it. You can't break it. You can't shake it. Book of Romans says that there's nothing you can do to separate yourself from the love of God. It is so much stronger than anything you could ever do. I've been chosen. I have been saved. I have been redeemed. I've been rescued. That's the focus. What's Gomer's name mean? I'm glad you asked. These are great questions. I appreciate you guys asking these. Gomer's name, it means complete. Not what I would have expected. Complete. What is that? She may not act like it. In fact, there's one point where in Hosea, he writes, you can stop playing the harlot. And even the phrasing, stop playing. That's not you. You might not act like it, but the Bible says in Colossians, in him you have been made complete already. Not will be made, not if you get the promotion, if you change jobs, if you move, if you get a nicer car, if you upgrade, if you change your life somehow, if you get married finally and have another kid, you will be, no. Have been made complete. So Jesus says, think about this story. This is what my ministry is about. This is why I'm sitting down with the needy, because there's so many who just think that they got their stuff together. They don't need me. I came for the needy. And revelation comes with the duality of this thought. I'm simultaneously, it's what Martin Luther said, simul justus et peccator. Simultaneously, I am both justified and sinner at the same exact moment. Same guy, same moment, nothing's changed. I am right now 100% sinless before God and 100% sinful before you and before me. In that same way, I'm Gomer. I am at the same time 100% complete and at the same time 100% desperate and in need. Those aren't mutually exclusive qualities. In fact, that's the posture of a believer. I'm full yet desperate. That's the prayer. Pray like this, with thanksgiving for what you need. What I have with what I need. Boldly approach with confidence. You're only confident if you're prepared and if you have. Boldly approach with confidence in your time of need. I want to close with the last verses of Matthew chapter 9, and we'll wrap up here. And this is sort of the call to action. This is the marching orders that are culminated with all this beautiful saving grace and healing power that Jesus demonstrates. Matthew 9, verses 35 through 38. Jesus was going through all the cities and the villages, and he was teaching in their synagogues, and he was proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom. And he was healing every kind of disease and every kind of sickness. Seeing the people, he felt compassion for them. It wasn't being impressed by them. It was compassion for them that moved his heart because they were distressed. They were dispirited. They were like sheep without a shepherd. And he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers, the laborers are few. Therefore, beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into this harvest. I, as I said, feel pretty inadequate and ineffective most of the time. But then I'm reminded of the types of people that God works through and he chooses. He chose a guy like Matthew, who was completely disqualified. In fact, he was a cancer to the team. He brought strife and division with him. Just his mere presence was tense. I don't know about you, but I feel unlikable oftentimes. I even say to my wife, I don't think, including myself, there's a very long list of people who like me. And then I'm like, but Matthew, though, his own family couldn't deal with him. Matthew's name. Do you know what Matthew's name means? It's a great question. It means gift from God. God's gift. Matthew means God's gift. He's also called Levi. And Levi is a name that his parents would have given him. And that means Levi is taken from the priestly tribe of Israel. The priests. These are the priests. So his parents had high hopes. And I'm sure he was a young man, but I'm sure probably late teens, early 20s, his parents were like, where have we gone wrong? This is not the priest we raised. But then his story's not over. We're sitting in a room reading this documentation of this numbskull about the most important thing that's ever happened in history. Didn't see that one coming. God only uses the unqualified. Only. He only uses the needy. He only uses the desperate. And he talks to these needy, desperate nobodies. And he says, guys, the harvest is ready. People need good news. Let's go give it to them. And he's saying that to his team of misfits. And he's saying it's all ready. We need the laborers. Who are the laborers? The people that he's been healing and restoring and inspiring and loving, who are the least, the last, and the lowest, the disqualified, because he gets the glory, they don't. He does the work, they don't. It's in our weakness his strength is perfected, and God bless those who've got a lot of weakness. And that's the one thing I can raise my hand for. And it just so happens to be the currency of the move of God. That in our weakness, his strength is perfected. It's magnified. It shows up the biggest, the boldest, the brightest in the weakest, darkest places. So may this amazing story about Jesus dining and spending his time with his feet up, reclining at a table with the sinfully broken, the morally broken, the unpopular, the unqualified. May this underline the significance of right where Jesus has us. Now, you may not be morally bankrupt, and to that I say, great. But we're all broken. We're all weak. That weakness, that brokenness, that need shows up in different areas and aspects, but may we never lose sight of our desperate need for this great physician to be with us, to carry us, to fulfill us, to give us what we need to live this life. We're in constant need, abiding in the vine, for Jesus to deliver on a regular basis. Walking and living by faith means I need you to show up, because otherwise I sink. It's relying desperately on his grace, because that's all we got. But that's all we need. And through us, he can do unbelievable things. I'll close with this. I'm a student of culture, which means I people watch. I try to study, I try to learn. I'm trying my best in my old age to stop criticizing and jumping to conclusions, but it's very, very hard because people's music today is awful. The hairstyles. I know Jesus took mine away from me because I was unfaithful with little, or unfaithful with much, and God gave me little. But I'm looking at the hairstyles today. I'm like, oh my goodness, the Harry Styles. I'm becoming Mr. Wilson. I grew up Dennis the Menace. I'm becoming Mr. Wilson. But in my attempts to not judge, but just to watch and observe, what this world is hungry for is not another know-it-all. Is not another proven commodity who's got a reputation and a resume. What moves the heart of humanity and the hope of humanity is Christ working through people at the back of the line who are willing to get their hands dirty. God gives grace to the humble. And by the grace of God, I'm part of the most humble church that I've ever experienced. And that's not because of me. That's because of Jesus working in you. And I'm overwhelmed and inspired by it. And that, may we never sell ourselves short what we carry and the impact that we make. Not because we're gregarious, over-the-top, charismatic presenters, because the humility and the beauty of the gospel of Jesus shines through the cracks in our lives. Authenticity, just being real and being human and being weak and being in it together, is the most powerful, beautiful, amazing, moving work of God, miracle that one can experience in modern culture. The harvest is plenty. May we be willing vessels to carry the ministry and to be the laborers to do the work. I want to pray. If you would, just bow your heads. I want to pray. First, I want to put this invitation out there. If you're here and